Good Up is our space to talk about those experiences in life we didn't know we all had in common. We're the after work happy hour conversation with your best friend.
You good up fine, like, hello.
The place where you bring up the hard parts of life, the ones that made you laugh, and the things that made you who you are. Because who said becoming good up wasn't a little bit uncomfortable? Stay tuned for more information about this week's episode. Hey, beautiful people, and welcome back to another episode of the Good Up podcast, also known as, the only podcast from the Virgin Islands to chart as number 31 on Apple Podcasts. I just had to throw that in there.
Yes, huh? It's giving like...
Listen, we haven't recorded since we found that news out, so I was like, let's just put that out there before we start the episode. Let me toot our own horn a little bit. Can we do that?
Love.
Yeah, so, for those of you who weren't following me on Twitter when I absolutely lost my shit because I found out at midnight or something like that we had charted. And charting on Apple Podcasts is not easy. So the fact that we did, and it was a crazy week, Deidre. We went viral on TikTok. We charted on Apple.
I just, every week I'm more and more surprised at the fact that people really fuck with us. I live for it, but I'm also like, yeah, really, really fuck with us though. I love it.
Especially when I look at clips of us talking absolute shit. I'm like,
right.
You sure?
We're such degenerates over here. We're so ghetto. What? What?
It really is affirming though, because it tells me that hey, Isa, you can be who you are. You can cuss. You can talk in your accent. You can,
yes,
talk about these hard topics that nobody else wants to talk about. And people will still listen. So thank you guys so much for listening. If you're a new listener and you found us on TikTok, welcome to the dark side. We have Cruise and Rum and absolute shenanigans for you. So
yeah,
today's episode, today's episode is going to be interesting as the rest of the season was, but I want to make sure I take time to allow our guest to introduce herself. I actually found her on TikTok, and I absolutely love her account and everything that she talks about and her platform. It's really meant a lot to me in my own grief journey, so I want to take some time to introduce Sha. Sha, welcome to the Good Up podcast.
Thank you for having me. My name is Sha, as you already said, but I accidentally started a platform called Grief is Ghetto, and I just kind of tackle basically the grief journey and the not so pretty parts of the grief journey and how it's made me feel. And in return, I've gotten a lot of people who somehow, for whatever reason, relate to that. So it's kind of like y'all is where you was people actually fuck with me. It's the same for me. I'm like, y'all be listening to what I say. Okay. So yeah, it was totally by accident, but I'm so glad I did it. And I'm so glad to be here. This is dope. All of this is dope. And y'all are dope. So I appreciate you for having me.
Well, thank you, ma'am.
Thank you for coming. Thank you. Because you're pretty dope. And you said something that I was like, there's nothing pretty about grief. There's nothing pretty about it. Grief,
no.
like your shirt says, grief is ghetto.
It really is hell. Absolutely.
Nothing pretty about it. Nothing.
The minute I saw your first video and you said grief is ghetto, you have found a way to describe grief so perfectly.
Yes.
With that word. And the minute I heard that, I was like, oh, I'm following her, because absolutely it is ghetto.
Ghetto.
It really
so
is.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, you have created this platform on TikTok, and you've talked about so many different aspects of grief through your own experiences. And I think what I love about it the most, and why I reached out to you, is that community that you have built. We, your followers, have kind of realized oh, grief comes in all these different ways. I remember going through the comments and seeing people talk about their family members, their friends, significant others, grandparents, and how everyone was able to kind of just come together in that grief and just openly talk about the things that you talk about. So I applaud you for that, because I know that it's not easy to talk about grief, but it's dope as fuck that you've created this you know, community of people and allowed people to just speak honestly about the fact that grief fucking sucks. It's not graceful. It's not pretty. It's
not at all.
It
Not
sucks.
at all. It
It really
does.
sucks.
It does.
What made you want to put yourself out there and kind of openly talk about the grief? Because I think, you know, some of us choose to just kind of deal with our grief privately, but you chose to make that platform. So what pushed you in that direction?
I'll be honest with you. Like I said, it was totally by accident. A friend told me, like, start when my boyfriend passed. She was like, well, why don't you write letters to him? And in the letters, I would kind of talk about how I felt that day. And at the end, you know, I would say, you know, Ken, this shit is ghetto. Like, it's so ghetto. Because I've experienced grief in so many stages. Like, you know, my dad has passed, my godfather's passed. But this grief when my boyfriend passed was so different. And I started to feel like, I'm losing my shit. So I started looking up those grief stages and I'm like, I don't relate to these stages. Why is this different from how I feel? And so I randomly was like, I'm just going to start recording myself. And when I posted it, I was like, well, maybe somebody will say, oh, I understand, like one person. And I never in a million years thought this many people would say, oh my God, like me too. And I'm like, really? Okay, it's not just me. Okay, because I thought it was me. But it really does feel good to be able to speak about it. It is difficult at times because talking about my grief and talking about Ken and talking about the way I felt and going back into it, you know, does kind of send me on a dark journey sometimes. But then there are those days where I talk about it and then I read the comments and it's like, yes, like everybody feels good for just saying like, I feel the same way. This happened to me. So it really is just a liberating feeling and it makes you, I don't know, it's like a breath of fresh air. Not that I'd love for people to relate to it because what a shitty thing to relate to, you know, losing a loved one. But I love that people really open up and they feel comfortable talking to me or anybody. Like now I'm noticing my followers talk to each other. Amazing. Like that's so dope to see, because there are some days where I read the comments and I'm like, I can't today, but then others will come in like, oh, me too. So it's a beautiful thing, all by accident, but absolutely beautiful.
Yeah.
It's honestly like, I can't even say it enough. It actually is really dope to see people in the comments relating to each other on that. Because I think that something people who have experienced grief recognizes that nobody else really understands what it is that you're going through while you're going. It feels like you're alone in it.
Lonely, yes.
Yeah. So I have a question for the group, you know, in speaking of that, what is the one thing, you know, while you are experiencing grief or while you have experienced grief that you wish everybody else knew or understood?
I wish, well, I would love for people to recognize that it's not a linear thing. It's not like, oh, well, you're going upward. It's not that. It's literally waves. You're here and then you get, you know, set back and then you might feel great on Wednesday and then on Thursday it's like, fucking shoot me, and then on Friday it's like, this is great. So I didn't experience that until Ken. This is like, I feel different from day to day. So again, those 5 stages that they say you're supposed to go through and you're supposed to reach this point, it's like, well, why can't I get here? And it's because it doesn't go this way. It goes like this. So I wish that more people understood that, because I think more people would be a little more sensitive to people who are grieving if you knew that every day is different. Literally, every day is different.
That's fair. And you know what? It sounds to me like, which I feel like should be the case, is the 5 stages of grief are really in no particular order.
None.
And I think that's why it's hard to relate to it sometimes. It's because it's giving you a specific order and it's like, it doesn't happen in that order for everybody.
Right.
And that's what I would wish them, like when, during your period of grieving, I think it's really like, I want to see everybody understand that grief looks different for everybody. Some people cry a lot and, you know, go through those emotions and they're comfortable in those emotions. And then other people shut down. You know, some people work a lot more when they're processing grief. It just looks so different for everybody. Some people engage in reckless behavior. You know, some people become obsessive about something else. You know, grief just looks so different. And so it gets really, disturbing to see people question other people's grief.
Right.
Like, didn't this person just, and this is such a random, like obviously fictional example, but I'm a huge Desperate Housewives fan. And when one of the main characters, Brie Vandekamp, her husband died, and she continued about her normal routines and essentially just added the planning of his funeral to her routine, right? And she was still her very cold self, still her very perfectionist self, doing her day-to-day housewife stuff. But planning her husband's funeral was on the agenda, and making sure that he looked amazing in his coffin and things like that. And everybody, including the deceased's mother, was like, did she want him dead? Is this what I'm like? And really, she just didn't know how to just tell people, yo, I am devastated. My fucking husband just died, you know? And the only moment she had to really feel her feelings was by herself at the dining room table the night of his funeral. And she just broke down and bawled. And I'm like, I hate that it's so common in our society for people to question someone that's grieving because their grief doesn't look like what people expect it to look like.
How you think it should.
Right. Oh, she's not falling apart. She's able to plan this funeral meticulously the same way she plans her brunches. She must not be grieving, bitch. What the fuck? Like, her life as she knows it is done. Okay?
Right. Absolutely.
So yeah, I think that's the one thing that I would want to see people understand better.
Yeah, people, that especially always blows my mind, because it's like, what is grief supposed to look like? What is it? So how am I supposed to predict how I'm going to react or feel? Or I have felt grief. You know what this brings up for me? When a famous person dies and their fans or people who knew of them experience essentially grief. And people are like, you didn't even fuck with that person's music. You didn't even like this person. You didn't even know who this artist was for real. Like, they start to have like grief Olympics on social media. And I'm like, yo,
grief Olympics.
The battle of the grieving.
I love it. Like the grief, like people legit try to like measure or qualify your grief. And I'm like,
absolutely.
I get maybe this person didn't know that celebrity personally, but you can experience grief from literally anything. People experience grief from the loss of a job. People experience grief when their friendships transition. People experience grief of losing themselves, of like a older version of who you were and realizing that that person is gone. Like, grief is literally just your acknowledgement of the loss of something, right? And it doesn't have to be something that was related to you or something that was close to you, or it literally can happen at any given point. I remember Robin Williams died and I cried like he was a family member.
Me too. That shit hit hard. It was it was hard.
To this day, I still can't I can't watch his movies. I feel like I legit feel like grief when it comes to his passing, because it was sad. Because I was like,
for many reasons.
Yeah, because
he was a part of our upbringing. Like,
he was, exactly. So, and I remember like judging myself for it and being like, why are you sad over this person? Like, obviously it's sad, he died, but like, why are you still impacted by this death? And I had to learn that it's just how grief works.
That's how
grief works. But
and also,
very good points.
Even though you may not know him personally, there's something about him and the way he expressed his art that created some source of comfort for you. And maybe that your inner child is who's grieving, like, what the fuck? Like, somebody like, for instance, Mrs. Doubtfire. Now as an adult and a single mama, I'm like, nigga, you are terrible for scamming your ex-wife like that. But 7-year-old Deidre, I went up for Mrs. Doubtfire. And if Robin Williams had died at the age that I was watching Mrs. Doubtfire, I would probably be a blubbering mess. Like, that man was a genius in our eyes, right? He made some really interesting movies. So it makes sense that you're grieving that loss. Because he died, but a part of the things that you enjoy also died. Yeah. And I think it makes sense to see it that way. You brought up something that's really interesting to me, because I don't think a lot of people recognize that when they lose themselves, that's something worth grieving. And a lot of times they don't even realize that they are grieving. Because sometimes we be out here in a funky mood, not realizing it's because we're grieving.
Grief, right? Absolutely.
And grieving self.
I am experiencing that right now because I am going through just a big phase of transition in my life.
Yeah.
And I find myself, and it's funny, I literally just got done reading a book about that type of grief, like grieving yourself. And I think people don't realize that like you're allowed to grieve an older
You're
version
allowed
of
to.
yourself.
Yes.
Yeah. Like
Yes.
you can do that. And I'm just
You want to
now
hear
like
something wild?
acknowledging that.
Are you a Beyonce fan, Sha?
I am.
Do you
Welcome.
guys know? Yeah, well, like one thing, we are some huge Beyonce fans over here. We're proud members of the Beehive. Fun fact, at least this is something that I came to realize one day when I was like in meditation or something. That song Heaven on Self-Titled was actually Beyonce singing to herself. A version of
Aw.
herself had died. That was not a friend that she had lost. That wasn't, a lot of people assume she was singing about the babies that she had lost. She was singing to herself.
Yeah, that's what I thought. She was
Yeah,
grieving the
she was.
babies.
Yeah, no, she was singing to herself. A version of herself had died, and she was singing to herself as she was moving on to become a different version of herself.
Wow.
Yeah.
Next time you listen to that song, listen to it from that perspective. You're probably gonna cry.
That's
And I was
a
gonna
song
say that gives it a whole new
And
meaning.
yeah, and that
Right.
happened because I think I was going through something, and I was listening to that song, and I was listening to it from that perspective, like kind of singing it to myself, and I was like, holy shit, Beyonce wrote this song to herself.
See, and that's why she's a fucking genius. That's
Exactly.
amazing. That's amazing.
It was beautiful, and I want to see us do that to normalize grieving the loss of, like, the death of our ego and just parts of ourselves that we need to start, laying to rest, because we're gonna evolve.
You know what happens sometimes too is that experiencing grief of another person kind of causes you to go through that transition with yourself.
It does.
Depending on like just the level and the impact of that loss. Like my grandmother's death is like a really monumental part of my life for that reason, because I cannot tell you what happened the year she died.
Wow.
Barely remember what happened the year she died. Like at least I remember before, and I don't really remember much of the months afterwards. And it's because like that was a huge, I mean, it was a grief period, but it was also a transition of like me as a person. So, I mean, my next question for you guys is, in thinking about that and thinking about how grief impacts you, what is the most important lesson that you've learned from your grief or within your grief? Mic drop. Boom.
I was like, what? It has to be, you said it earlier, but that it's okay to grieve and that you don't have to put yourself on a time limit. Because, when my boyfriend passed, I had gone into 3-4 months, and I was like, why do I still feel like shit? And my friends was like, what is this time limit you're on? I was like, but by now I should be back to normal, right? Like, then it's like, well, what the fuck is normal now? Right? Like, it's okay to experience it in your time, in your space, as you experience it, because no one, at the end of the day can tell you, okay, so by this time on this day, you're going to be fine. Learning that there's no time limit was probably the biggest lesson for me, because I'm still going through it. This is over a year later. And then, I think I'm getting somewhere with that. Then boom, my aunt passes away. So I'm like, well, hold on. Now I'm caught in a whole nother mess of grief that it sends me back into the grief I felt with Ken. So it's like, hey, you keep climbing. It's no time limit. You do it in your time, in your space, your way.
I appreciate that your friends said that to you. Like, what is normal? Because normal was a very different version of your life prior to this loss, and then you're trying to like get back there. But how do you get back there, right?
Because like, you don't go back. You move forward with this new reality. Because I was about to say, you got some really good friends, because
they are dope.
Like that's the most appropriate response. Like, what is normal? Like, your normal is change. It's different. It's changed. And you, for one, we're not going to get too much into it, because you probably had a certain amount of plans and things that you had envisioned, and that just kind of gets ripped away, and you think, oh, let me just go back to normal.
Right.
No, you're going to embrace your new normal.
Exactly.
And learn to work with that.
Right.
It's something important that you talked about on your TikTok. You talked about being angry at the person who you lost, right? As a result of like what Deidre just brought up, like all these plans or all, you know, this vision that you had and how that just like suddenly changes. That was such an important video because nobody ever thinks about like that anger or just like those random, everybody thinks like, oh, sad, right? I'm just gonna feel sad about the loss, like, but you was like, no, I was pissed off. And I was like, thank you for talking about that. Because
yes, I based that episode off of that Fresh Prince episode I watched where Uncle Phil's mom was saying she was angry at her husband for passing away, and I was like, okay, so again, it's not just me, right? Because I was so mad at Ken, and then when you get mad, you feel guilty about being mad.
Yeah.
It is just a back and forth thing. And when I would write to him, I was like, why the fuck did you do all this? Why did you do that?
Why you had to die though? Like you couldn't just get a little sick
like,
or something. You had to die.
You had to die? I was like, okay, stop playing. It's not funny no more. Come on back because we have stuff to do. But I was very angry with him. And I would feel so shitty about that I would just lay up and cry, and it would just be a cycle. So I love that other people said the same thing, like, oh well, I was mad too. I'm like, okay, so it's so normal to feel that anger and that frustration with them, even though they had no control over what they left.
Do you guys think that anger comes when it's the death of like a partner that you have chosen, as opposed to like a family member that you kind of were born into, if that makes sense? Like, now I fully understand being angry at your partner for dying, and obviously like knowing that you can't control it. I've obviously never experienced that kind of loss. So I've never been angry at a loved one for dying, but I felt immense guilt when people have died, particularly my grandmother. My grandmother died, we're in 2022. So this December is going to make 10 years since my grandmother died. And I think maybe last year was the year I finally got over my guilt. For the whole time, ever since she died, I felt extremely guilty because she died in December. I was hosting Thanksgiving that year. And my mom comes to the house and she said, did you call your grandmother to tell her happy Thanksgiving? And I was like, I didn't get a chance to because I was so busy, but I'm definitely going to call her for Christmas. And she died December 12th. Jeez. So I didn't get to call her for Christmas. And so
you felt guilt over like,
oh my God, I felt like, what the fuck, Deidre? Like, how could you not know this lady wasn't gonna live forever, you dumb bitch? Like, that's the conversation I was having. Mind you, she was also young. She was only 69 when she died. So it's not like she was old and sick. She had a sudden heart attack and died. And so the morning when I got the news, for one, I was devastated. But then for two, I was like, you dumb bitch. Like, you didn't even consider the fact that she might not make it to see Christmas. Like, and I just went through all the motions. And then on the anniversary of her death, I was pregnant with Dylan. And I think, I want to say like around December 1st, I started to feel some level of like empathy for her. Cause I'm like, she died right before Christmas. She probably had all these plans. She probably already started buying Christmas cards, because grandma was a lady who was sending out Christmas cards and shit. Yes. So I'm like, she probably already had like Christmas cards that she was getting ready to send out. And then I came across the Christmas card that I had written for her that year, the year that she died. And it was just a lot. And I felt like a combination of like bad for her that she just died in the middle of her plans. I started to wonder what the day she died was like for her. Like she woke up in the morning, ran her errands, probably went to the doctor or some shit, because she was such a good Taurus. Like she took like, and then she just fucking like has a heart attack before bed after her shower and dies. Like that's what started running through my mind. And guilt was like the part that I felt the worst for a long time. Like
guilt was definitely the strongest emotion for me. I wasn't angry at my grandmother. I was angry at everybody else. I was pissed, and nobody could like understand the level of rage I was experiencing. And honestly, I was angry at people who hadn't even done shit. Why are you happy? Like, I was just so ragey. The next day, my family was like, let's go to the beach. I was like, for what? Celebrating, right? I was so pissed off, and I didn't understand like why I was that angry. But I was angry at God. I was angry at everybody who I felt had a role in why this lady wasn't here anymore. And it was nonsensical. It was illogical. Like, it didn't make any sense. But that's just the feeling that I was experiencing. And then that feeling was followed by guilt. So me feeling like this woman deserved more time. And then I think survivor's guilt too, of like, this person deserved time and somehow I got it. So why am I here? And then you go through the whole existential crisis of like, well, why am I here?
Ain't it ghetto?
Ghetto.
Very ghetto. I
ghetto.
experienced a lot of the survivor's guilt with Ken, because I would call it praying, but I would just talk at God. And I'm like, well, why Ken and not me? He's better than me. Why Ken and not me? Like I he knows me. Like I'm the shit talker. I'm the, run them hands. I'm the fuck them. I don't, if I don't fuck with you, I don't fuck with you for life. But Ken was the, no, we need to forgive. We need to be peaceful. We're not going to fight. And I'm just like, I was worse. Why not me?
Not to upset you, but that's exactly why him and not you.
I know,
so you could grow to be just like him.
But
I'm
see,
so sorry
in
to
my
say
grieving brain, that
you're
makes
like,
no fucking sense to me. Like, no, we need good people like him on the earth, not me. So it really fucked with me in that way, that surviving. I'm just like, that's whack. Like, that's so whack. Because he made me better. Because I was like, well, now how do I become better? So everybody, I was just like you. I'm like, no, I'm gonna fight everybody. You got something to say, you get hit. I was just, because he was.
And that's a big loss, dude. Like, that's and I don't think anybody in our age group ever imagines that kind of loss. And I think that's probably why it's even that big of a loss. Like, you never thought, like, we don't think about that shit for like another 50, 60 years. Like, how you gonna fucking die, my dude? Like, what the fuck?
Like, what the fuck are you doing right now?
We were not prepared for this.
It was so ridiculous. I was like, who experiences this in their 30s? This is fucking stupid. And I used to say it to my friends all the time, like, this shit's so fucking ghetto. This is so ghetto.
You know what I
was
love?
Strange.
I love this level of like the expression of grief, right? Like, I don't want to say I hate it because people process how they want to process, but I hate the I'm so sorry and the oh my god they were such a good person and kind of like the really emotional. I want the rage. I want to sit in a room with my friends and be like, why the fuck would she die? Like, that's so fucking stupid.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Like, I can't believe this bitch really had the audacity to croak.
Like, you had to do all of that, huh?
Like, you couldn't even try.
Just leave, huh?
You know what was funny too is that my grandmother was late to her own funeral, and I was the person who busted out laughing in the car when I realized that she was late to her own funeral. Like, that's me. Like, I was like, you would be late to your own funeral. Like, really?
Yes.
Seriously.
No, I understand that so wholeheartedly. Like, just sitting in a room, like I've done that with my friends where we sit there. When we were doing Ken's memorial, we had a memorial outside where we just said, nice things about him. But when we were setting up, two of my friends was like, why are we doing this shit? Like, and we all sat there like, this shit's so stupid. Like, why are we doing this? And we had to all just take a break because we was like, this is fucking dumb. Why are we setting up a memorial? We need to be somewhere drinking. But we sit here setting up a memorial because this nigga just had to leave the earth. Like, this is ridiculous. So it's so strange to feel it. But even to go back to what you said about grieving a partner versus, like a relative. So my aunt recently passed. I wasn't mad at her because she was sick and she was older. And so initially I felt joy for her because I was like, you know what? She's had a great life, a long life, and I am happy that it was peaceful. But then I did just like you, where I started to get mad at everybody else because I was one of my aunt's caregivers. And so anybody that we needed help from that didn't offer help, fuck you, fuck your kids, fuck everybody,
and then the ones at the front row at the funeral, wearing the
boo-hoo crying.
Yeah, doing the most. Yo, at my grandma's funeral, one of her nieces walks into the funeral parlor, barely makes it to my grandmother's coffin, I might add, and is falling out on her
knees, her shit,
wailing, making all this noise. And so literally, and also I know my grandmother also is not here for that shit. My grandma was a very snobby lady, right? So she don't want all that drama. So we all, like, all my grandmother's like kids and grandkids were kind of looking around like, holy shit, what do we do? Because how is it that this lady got 4 children and none of them ain't acting like this? this with this random
She coming in, cutting
And
up.
so all of us are trying to find very like tactful ways to kind of like help her, I guess. And it was funny because my mom was sitting there staring at her with this look of like disdain. And as uncomfortable as we were, we also were kind of a little glad that my mom was, because she was just looking at her like, if you don't shut your motherfucking mouth.
Listen, at my grandmother's funeral, so many people who were at her funeral who I knew maybe took advantage of her during her. She was a caretaker. She took care of everyone's kids. She did a lot for a lot of people. And I felt angry at all the people who had benefited from that. And then the fact that she never got to really like enjoy a life of like peace and rest. And then it ended with her getting sick. And I was like, seriously, God? And I went through a whole religious crisis too, because she was this devout Christian woman, right? Who had literally structured her life according to God's will. And did all this kindness for all these people, sacrificed so much of her life, and then you give her cancer. Please explain, sir.
Right,
Ma'am,
right.
whoever.
Like right now. Right, whomever. No, really. It's questioning God is probably the biggest thing. And, you know, Christians don't want to talk about that. But no, I got questions, Jesus, because just what the fuck? Like when... What
like if somebody says, what questions do you have for God? What the fuck?
What the fuck?
Yeah,
God?
what the fuck?
Because
That's the main
why?
question. That's the main question. What the fuck? Because that applies to all the terrible things happening on this planet.
What the fuck?
What
Right,
the fuck?
the fuck? What is this
What the
for?
fuck, God? What's the
I remember
reason?
saying that. I remember screaming. I was like, what do you want? Like, what do you want from me? What is this? What is this for? Because
Could
this
you
is fucking
imagine?
ridiculous.
Imagine God sitting there and somebody screaming at him like Cardi B. What was the reason?
What was the
What was
reason?
the reason?
He's sending you to hell so quick. It's like, just send me down because I'm mad.
Listen, I really hope that questioning him is not like the first class ticket to hell, because I questioned him so much between the day that lady died and today that he's probably like, soon as she gets up here is on site. Like, me and him have beef. We're getting to a better place now, but it's taken me a long time.
No, I feel you.
That's your journey, though.
None of it made sense. Grief doesn't make sense. It's ghetto. It's
Very ghetto.
And you know what? That rage that you guys talk about, I felt it at my grandfather's funeral, because I just remember being very offended. You know, back home, funerals are going to always have a viewing, honey. Like, and I just remember it was really disturbing to me. This was my first time seeing that at a funeral. And by the time my granddad had died, I'd been to many a funeral, honey. But there was a literal line of people waiting to see my grandfather in the casket. And I was 16, 17 when he died. And I just remember sitting in a chair by the church doors, looking at those people and hating every single one of them and wondering why.
Took a picture.
That's
no,
picture your grandmother in the.
My aunt too. No, people are crazy.
That's so weird to me. But I remember just these people in this line. It was like a long line of people waiting for like some newly released fucking burrito,
dead body, right?
And they're all like in line waiting to take their turn to watch my grandfather in his casket. And I was just sitting there, and I didn't say a word. And I remember one of my aunts coming up to me and saying, "Come on, Dee, let's go outside," because she could feel what I was feeling in that moment. She was like, "Come on, baby, let's go outside. Let's go outside." And I was like, "Oh."
I'll never forget that big, clunky, stupid ass iPad that old, I don't even know who that old ass man was. I wanted to fight. And it was without a second thought. He didn't even seem shy about it. He just held up the iPad and took a picture of my grandmother's body. And I was like,
why? What is the reason?
Why? What do you?
And
it's just important.
This goes back to this conversation on grief. You think that when you experience grief, it's kind of an understood thing for people not to say certain shit, for people not to do certain shit, for people not to fucking pull out clunky ass iPads at funerals. But you will be surprised how people will do the exact same shit that you think they would never be capable of.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you, Sha, because we had an episode a few weeks ago about people saying the wrong things in their pursuit of expressing empathy. If I'm allowed to ask this, what was the worst thing you heard? The worst, quote, comforting words that somebody tried to offer when you were going through that loss?
The worst comforting words. So many. At least you weren't married, and at least you didn't have children. At least. I was like, what does that even mean? Well, if you had children, it would be it wouldn't be anything. It is what it is. So yeah, people
lost your partner.
Exactly. It just people. I think with them not knowing what to say, they just say anything because it's almost like, well, I have to say something, but it's like you really don't. You don't have to offer any fucking words at all. Offer silence. It's best, if you don't know what to say. But I've had some dumbass shit said to me, especially at his viewing service. We did have a viewing for him, and we had people like say pull up that Ken had tried to call. And see, here's the thing. People didn't understand Ken and I's relationship. That was my bestie. So he told me everything. So I know everybody that he reached out to that didn't answer the phone, everybody that he texted that didn't respond. But boy, did they pull up in fucking, crowds to come see him. And I just was like, anytime, I'm just so sorry. Shut the fuck up. He called you 5 days ago and you didn't answer. But now you're here and you're so fucking sad. Like that, that type of stuff just really, I try not to go back to anger, but God damn it. Shit like that bothers me so bad. That to me, I can almost take the words more than I can take, the action of acting like you're just so fucking upset about that person's passing. Like, stop the show. Because if you wanted to have a better relationship or talk to them, you would have. You know what I'm saying? And I know I have to, one thing I'm working on in my grief is letting people experience their grief. So what you're experiencing, because you did not reach out to that person or you did not help, that person that needed your help, you're experiencing your guilt. And now your guilt is what's causing you to fall all out at the funerals and make a fucking ass of yourself because you feel guilty about the actions that you made to that person that's now laying in that casket. So I am really trying to get to a point where I let people do their thing, because sometimes I'll post Ken and they're like, oh, I just miss him so much. Word. Because when he was here,
are you
didn't do
sure?
Shit. Right.
My goodness. Sure?
And I'd be wanting to ask, like, well, at least y'all didn't talk that much because you never answered the fucking phone. So there's that.
Well, that's the thing. Like, feel your feelings. I have your grief, but don't make it the problem of the people who were closest to this person.
Right.
Don't involve their family members. Don't involve them.
Right.
Take your shit. Don't comment. You know what else I hate? People on Facebook, and it's funny because I was talking about like how people will police other people's griefs, but I feel like this is different. People go on Facebook and they talk about how they miss a person, and then they'll tag the person's family members in every single post. Why would you do that?
I hate it. I hate it.
People do that?
I've had that.
Yes.
Oh, God, absolutely. You know how many great days I've had, and then I go on Facebook, man, I'm really missing my boy Ken. Boom, me tagged in. I'm like, I was having a good day. I was having a really good day today.
Yeah.
Why?
Or upon finding out that they passed, they'll tag you. Why are you tagging me? I already know.
Don't. I obviously know. I was the day after my aunt passed, and he didn't know, but one of Ken's friends had tagged me literally that day. It was like, dang, I'm really missing Ken. I'm like, hey, today I can't do this shit today. Like, I get what you're feeling today, but please feel it over there because I can't do it today.
Oh my God.
So some people don't really realize that, and I did a video about that as well. Some people don't realize that when they are grieving and they pull you into it, it's like, you're sending me back. I can't do it. I can't go back today. I have to go forward today. Now, there are days I'm going to sit around and be sad as shit, but I'm going to do that on my own terms. I'm not going to bring other people into it. Like, aren't you sad too? Come here, come be sad with me. Like, I'm not going to do that.
You know what the girls say? Misery loves company, honey.
Doesn't it? And I can't stand that. I can't really be a part of that.
It's very performative. It's very performative.
So performative, because if you are grieving this person, if you miss this person, why do you have to do it publicly? And why do you have to bring me into it? Like, common sense should tell you that if anyone is missing this person, it's probably me.
It's probably me.
Why are you tagging me?
Exactly. Like the nigga lived with me. We lived together. We had every day together. So of course, if anybody in the fucking world misses him, of course it's me.
It's the
So,
person he was living
unfair.
with and waking up with every morning.
Right.
You motherfuckers.
I obviously miss him every single day of my fucking life. Am I gonna post it every single day of my fucking life? No. However, and if you want to post it publicly, I'm not gonna knock you for that. Go for it, you know. But
don't
you gotta
bring
tag
you
me.
in.
You gotta tag me.
Right. Like leave people out of it. Especially the fucking person who was falling into the toilet when that nigga left the seat up. Like, come on. You
Right.
bastards.
Exactly.
Like,
Exactly.
how dare you?
Like, stop. Just stop.
I would have been blocking people.
I did.
I would have just stopped blocking people because you're not gonna keep playing in my fucking face. You're not.
Yeah, I blocked people. I cussed people out. I literally, my friends were like, "Let me see that phone real quick." I'm like, "No, I need my phone," because more people need to be cussed out. They were like, "No, we need you to focus."
Yeah,
I was on a rampage cussing people out. It was the best.
How are people so tone deaf? Like,
because people lack empathy. One.
Yes.
They're selfish.
Very.
That main character syndrome goes.
Yeah, there's that main character syndrome. There's that lack of common sense, and the combination of all those things, when faced with something as complicated as grief, means that most people don't know how to respond to somebody else's grief.
It's true.
So they respond like idiots, basically, and it's like, no, thank you. I don't want to hear the story of your grandmother's passing while you just found out that
you don't have to relate to me. Jesus.
Right.
That's probably the biggest thing. You don't have to, like, I have a lot of people that reach out, like, you know, my boyfriend passed too. And I love that you feel, you know, a sense of, I guess, relatability, with me. But in that moment of grief, sometimes if I'm expressing that I'm having a tough day or whatever, I don't need you to come in and then say, well, yeah, me too. Because when I did, I didn't ask you.
Yeah.
I'm having a day.
There's a difference. Like there's a difference between, oh, I can relate to this. Like, let's say when you post a video and somebody comments on it, or for example, the other day, so Friday was the anniversary of my grandmother's passing, and I tweeted about it, just saying, like, you know, it's weird that it's been 4 years and this is the year that I actually feel sad. I wasn't sad last year or the year before. I was fine. Just tweeted about it and I moved on, because Twitter for me is honestly like me yelling into the void, and I don't expect anybody to respond. And no shade to this person, but someone proceeded to send me the lengthiest direct, like, DM of the story of essentially their grandparents passing and how horrible it's been for them, how sad they were. And I was empathetic and I feel for them. And I told them, you know, I'm sorry to hear that. But they then put me in a position to essentially read a story on what that grief was like. And then to have to console them, because now you're telling me how you feel like shit and now I feel bad. So I have to console you while I'm already feeling like shit today. I'm having a shitty day.
That's crazy.
I put it out into the world. I just vented and said I'm having a shitty day, and now you want to come hold hands and have a shitty day with me. It was a lot. It was a lot. And I was just like, wow, people really don't know how to navigate.
I want to believe that some people don't have malicious intent behind doing that, but that is also a part of not understanding grief culture. Me grieving and me having my shitty day does not invite you to come have it with me. I didn't say I'm having a shitty day. Who else? Like, no, it's just I'm having a shitty day. Let me feel what I am feeling and then let me move on with my life. You know what I'm saying? So people don't really understand that when you give me a book, you know, a storybook of how you feel because I'm having a shitty day, that's not helping me and it's not helping you. So let's not, you know, do that. Sometimes I have to ignore messages, especially if I'm having a horrible day. I'll have to ignore messages like that and maybe come back to it when I'm having a better day and I can console you, because I don't want to give you my shit, unlike what you're giving me. You know what I'm saying?
What advice do you have for people experiencing loss or experiencing grief? If you could share anything based on what you've learned so far from your own personal experience with grief, what would it be? Find
a comfort. There's comfort in something. that's not destructive. There's comfort in something. There's something that we all like to do. There's something that brings us comfort. A lot of people be like, journal, do this, do that. Journaling didn't do shit for me. Everybody has something different. I find comfort in cooking. I find comfort in just, if it's raining, I will just stand on my porch and I just find comfort in that. So just small things, just pulling up in your fucking, driveway and sitting in the car for 3 minutes. If that's comforting, do it. Find whatever brings you peace, even if it's a very small amount of peace. Exercise those comforts and those behaviors, because you would be surprised how much, that brings you the smallest amount of joy. Like, and I was at work the other day and I was having a day. And I was like, let me just go outside for a minute and let me just breathe. And that brought me so much comfort just in that moment. So the biggest thing is just find a comfort in something, anything that's going to help you combat that, that negative feeling.
I think that's dope and beautiful. And I don't think people get told that enough, to be honest. People's favorite thing to say, be strong. Be strong.
Be strong.
Such and such would want you to be strong.
No, they wouldn't.
Did I ask you what my nigga would want? Did I ask you what my motherfucking nigga would want?
You know what? The funniest thing, people say that to me all the time. Well, Ken would want you to move forward. I'm like, you didn't know Ken very well. Ken Warren told me, if I die, I swear to God, you better not move on. He was like, I will come back as a ghost, hunt the fuck out of you, hunt the fuck out of any nigga you dated. Like, he would tell me constantly, if I die, get in here with me. And like, he was not playing. So I get so tickled that people are like, well, he would want you to move on and find happiness. I'm like, sure, please. Like, he told me, don't. You can't.
Yeah.
If I die, we die together.
Or like, how people be like, oh, such and such wouldn't want us crying over them. I love drama. Okay. Let me put it out into the air.
Hello. Yes.
Let me put it out into the air, because this podcast is going to live forever, bitch. If I die, y'all better be fucking crying. Y'all better be doing the absolute.
I'm gonna make a spectacle. Hey, Isa, I'm gonna be doing the most.
Don't get me wrong. I don't want a funeral, but y'all better be crying. You better be in your house boohooing. Like, I want all the Kleenex napkins used up in the house.
No,
like,
I do in the most.
Absolutely.
I go in live for like 24 hours straight. I'm gonna just be on live with my ring light, just crying. I'm gonna be letting people join the live so they can cry with me. Like,
absolutely.
We're gonna do the most.
Drama.
Yes.
I am the same. I want all of that. All of that.
Cry over me, because I happen to believe I'm a big motherfucking deal. So if I leave this world, it's a big motherfucking deal.
Y'all gonna make a splash. Absolutely. We're making a splash.
I tell my publicist all the time, I'll say, hey, if I die, get them videos out there. My shit better blow up. And I kid you not. Because if not, I'm hunting everybody. So y'all better make it a big deal. I want tears. I want all kinds of shit. Y'all better make this a big fucking deal.
Y'all gonna be wondering why the refrigerator light bulbs in your house always unscrewed just a little bit. It's me, because you have me fucked up. I want
that is
drama.
What
drama at my funeral. I'm dead.
Yes. Where is the screaming? Where is the falling out?
I want drama. Just don't put me in no clouds. Don't put no angel wings on me.
Listen, Ken said the same thing. His friend, that's the first thing one of his friends did. He was like, you know what I gotta do? I gotta put him in a cloud. And it seems so petty, but in that moment, that was probably the funniest thing I had seen that day, because he was stressed. Don't put me in clouds, don't put me in them ghetto wings, don't put me in none of that.
Oh my god.
And as soon as he passed, they was like,
you have to find things to laugh about.
You know what's funny? Me and my friend Glennis, we've always had this joke, because we're both like single mothers to like our one boy child, and we always say, bitch, I have life insurance, so if I see any motherfucking GoFundMe account, like when I tell you we be so like, we've made a promise to each other that we are going to scour the internet, and if any bitch posts a GoFundMe account, we are clearing her.
Oh God.
No GoFundMe.
I've already told my friends, if you see anybody on my wall on Facebook talking about "Girl, I miss you," drag them publicly.
Yeah.
Do what I would do in that moment.
Yes.
Yes. Me and Diamond made a promise to each other to log on to each other's Facebook and just kind of troll people as the other.
I really want somebody to log into my Twitter if something happens. And I know y'all, if you're listening and you're like, how can they laugh about this? Listen, all you can do is laugh at things
Because it's
that you
inevitable.
can't control.
One thing we're
can't
promised
control
is to
it.
die.
Absolutely.
Yeah, we cannot control any of it. And I've learned that you have to laugh at the shit, because if not, it becomes very scary and very like final. And yeah, so, but no, I've always wanted to give at least one person my Twitter password so that if and when they can get on my account and be like, not me dying, like I would.
Oh my God. So me and Diamond promised,
not me dying.
So me and Diamond promised each other that she could log onto my socials and let people know who I didn't like. Like she'll be like, like when I die.
First off, let me go on the list of people she
now
hated.
that I'm dead, let me let you know which one of y'all.
Not now that I'm dead.
This is a list of people who are not allowed to grieve publicly.
Yeah.
People that
Don't
I
you
fuck
dare
with.
act like, yeah. And should we even said like we're gonna go through the because you know people love to post on each other's on like the deceased wall.
Always.
So people who post on the wall who I really didn't fuck with, she gonna be like, bitch, I didn't even like you like that. Like, what are you talking about?
Not at all.
Like, you know, we didn't like each other.
Stop right now. Right. Stop. That was one thing I was grateful for when Kim passed, because on his Facebook, he had to approve all things that went on his wall. So 1,000 people posted, but none of it went on the wall. And I was like,
Thank God. Thank
great.
God.
Of course, I still saw, the post on my timeline, but none of it went on his wall, which I was happy about. But I was sure going in like, who are these people? Like somebody posted a message from him and them from like 2020. It's 2021, baby. So you
I want to know, why do people feel this need to prove their closeness with the deceased?
It is the
Have you ever
strangest
noticed
shit
that?
I've ever seen. Yes.
When
it's the
somebody
strangest shit.
dies, people
Main
feel this
character
need.
syndrome.
Yes, it's just like, I can't believe it. We just saw each other. That was 6 years ago. My dude,
Right.
like, what are you talking about? Like, what you mean we just saw each other?
You did not.
Like,
You did
no,
not.
you didn't.
Yeah. Well, listen, this was such a good conversation. And as y'all can see, like there's so many layers to grief. And I'm glad that, as difficult as grief is, and I know that we've all experienced it in some form, like we can talk about it, because I think that this will help other people to talk about it. And Sha, you're doing an amazing job with your platform.
Thank you.
Thank you for it.
Yeah, by creating that space, like you are doing a service to so many people who can't openly talk about or even joke about grief. She really has something with this platform. Like this is going to be amazing. And I can see it going so far because, again, this is something that we all can relate to. So I wish you the absolute best. But I also want to ask you, like, what's next for Grief is Ghetto? Like, where do you see this going? I know you had no plans to start it, but do you have plans to take it further than where it is now?
I mean, absolutely. I want to, of course, continue keeping the main thing, which is doing the videos and posting them. But I do want to go on to write books. I do want to speak, to people, and they come and we can, actually talk. I do want to start. I have t-shirts, and there are other things I want to offer as far as grief goes, because one thing I also talk about is people don't know how to gift, grievers, and we just get them what we think they want. So kind of having a platform where, you can maybe pick items and maybe have, a grief box, and you don't have to put that much thought into it because we can create it for you and then we'll send it to that person. So just some different things to kind of help people, grieving or not, understand the grief process and maybe, how you can help or how you can heal. So it's a lot in the works. I can't go fully into detail, but just those are some of the things I want to continue. Well, I want to start doing, and of course, continuing to do my little videos, even though I think I'm shadow banned on TikTok. My views have been very low. I don't know what's going on, but
TikTok will be disrespectful as fuck.
Algorithm, honey.
Yes.
TikTok will be like, you want to go viral? Cool. I'm gonna give you 2 videos, and then nobody gonna know where your page is for the next 3 months.
right, you're gonna just die on here. So yeah, it's fine. I don't take it personally at all. I keep posting and I'm like, hey, at some point it'll pick back up. So it's fine.
and the people who need to see those videos are seeing them at the time
Correct.
that they need to see
That's
them.
correct.
So I know
Absolutely.
I did, and I know other people can relate to that as well. So again, thank you so much for creating that platform. And thank you for being here and joining us in our shenanigans.
Oh, I love it. I love y'all's podcast. It's amazing.
Oh my gosh. Thank you.
I get invitations to do so many and I'm like, not my style, not my style. And then I saw y'all's and I was like, they cuss. Oh, yes. Right. Love it. So, I mean, y'all were right up my alley. I was like, yeah, I'm doing that one. So, yeah, exciting. I love it.
Wow, that makes
y'all are dope.
We're so grateful for that. Thank you.
Yeah.
You're welcome. And congrats.
Thank you.
You said you're the number. Tell me again.
So we hit number 31 on Apple Podcast relationships charts.
Nice.
I don't know where we are right now, but we were 31 for however long we were 31 for, and I am counting
that
it.
Is like there's thousands of podcasts, and in my opinion, a lot of podcasts tend to center relationships. Okay, so the fact that we even charted in that
is dope
category, and the fact that we top 50, stop playing. What?
Yes, I love it.
Thank you guys. I want to thank our Good Up listeners for getting us there. Like, y'all are literally the reason why we got there. I mean, obviously we sit here in front of these mics and talk cash shit, but y'all listen to it. And so one I'm watching the other, it seems like that to me.
Exactly.
Like, wow.
Thank you to the listeners. Gosh. Thank you to the patrons. Thank you to all the guests that we've had on the show. And thank you to all of you who like Sha just said, you hear that we cuss, you hear that we talk about whatever the fuck we want to talk about, and you've accepted that this is who we are.
Yes.
And we're not gonna change. I don't care what type of ad opportunities come up. If I can't say fuck in front of this mic, it's not happening.
It's not for us.
Correct.
Well, yeah, absolutely. I guess that's it for us for today. So again, thank you for coming. And yeah, if you are listening to the episode and you want to join in the conversation and tell us what your experience with grief has been like, you can tag us on social media at GoodUpPod. You can also use hashtag GoodUpTuesday. If you want to receive exclusive access to videos of the episodes and get episodes a bit earlier than everyone else, you can join us over at our VIP section, also known as the Good Up Podcast Patron community. So join us on Patreon at patreon.com/GoodUpPodcast. Help us keep the lights on in this bitch. And Love it. Other than that, we will see you guys next week. Deidre, tell the people and bye. Good Up is hosted and produced by Deidre Ritter and Heiza Quinones Ivory, and is a proud member of the Kickin' It family. Find us on all social media platforms at Good Up Pod. Use hashtag GoodUpTuesday to continue the conversation and get access to exclusive bonus content at patreon.com/GoodUpPodcast.